But as we're on our way down to kind of existing woodland, it's worth talking about opportunities for planting new woodland. There are sort of two grants that you can apply for to plant new woodland. There's a Countryside Stewardship Woodland Creation and the newer English Woodland Creation offer. I thought it's worth talking about the latter because the payment rates are slightly higher and the minimum plot size is also less. So the England Woodland Creation offer is a reasonably new thing, and it is run by the Forestry Commission. So previous administration blitz with the RPA hopefully won't happen with that scheme. The minimum plot size is 0.1 a hectare, with the minimum application size a hectare. These minimum plot size can be 20 metres wide, unless we're looking at water quality, in which they can be 10 metres wide. The payments of these are good, so you can get paid up to £8,500 per hectare to plant the new woodland, which they're saying is covering about 100% of the costs. In addition to this, you can get an uplift depending on the woodland that you're planting. So if you're planting a native broadleaf woodland, you can get a £1,100 a hectare uplift on top of this for species recovery. If you're planting along the course of a river, and you can then get an uplift of £1,600 a hectare if you're planting on riparian buffers. And then we've heard the phrase public money for public goods. Public access is being encouraged as well. So you can get, for example, £2,200 a hectare if you start including permissive access onto the woodland as well.
Okay, and Lottie, they are one-off payments?
Yeah, they're one-off payments, not annual, but they definitely help. You can get capital items paid for as well. Again, if it's public access, you can get up to 100% of the costs covered, so putting in footpaths or car parks. And then if you're trying to protect the newly planted woodland with deer fencing, you can get capital grants for that. The English Woodland offer really links quite nicely into the Woodland Carbon Code as well. So this is kind of a thing that's been set up to associate carbon credits based on the woodland that you're planting. Once this woodland's established, you have an opportunity to apply for woodland maintenance payments as well. So you get £200 a hectare to look after the woodland for 10 years, which helps with the establishment costs. And you can also get capital items for protecting the woodland, such as deer fencing. So the English Woodland Creation offer supports registration directly into the Woodland Carbon Code, which essentially allows you to sell the carbon that's equated in the woodland onto the private market. Once you're registered with this, you can then enter what's known as the Woodland Carbon Guarantee. So this is an auction in which landowners can sell the carbon that's going to be sequestered by the woodland, depending on the different species type, the composition, the soil. So at these quarterly auctions, you set the minimum price you're willing to accept for these carbon units, and average about £24 a tonne, and we've achieved up to £30 a tonne. And this is then sold, and then the scheme will essentially run for a minimum of 35 years. Every 5 to 10 years you'll have to kind of be visited, and the carbon units that you're selling are accredited and verified. But it's a good way of making money, not only from the carbon units, but also for the woodland planting that you've got there.
Okay, so that's what's available in terms of new schemes to establish new woodland. What about woodland that's already in existence, the mature woodland on farms? Is there anything available?
So getting funding for mature woodland on farms is a little bit harder. You've got to be in the right priority area to start off with, and if you're in this high priority area for woodland improvement and you have a woodland management plan in place, you can get paid £200 a hectare for woodland maintenance through a higher tier scheme. But like I said, that's a little bit long-winded to get into, but hopefully once the environmental land management scheme is up and running with the sustainable farming incentive, you should be able to receive £49 a hectare for woodland on farm, as long as it's 15 years old. It's things like managing the dead wood and the rides that are there, and attending kind of courses on how to manage the woodland to the best of your ability. But yes, so with the SFI we're finally seeing funding for woodlands and assets that we already have.
Yeah, that's quite exciting, because there's not been anything for existing woodland for quite some time really, has it, other than the very stringent entry requirements you set out. Okay, we'll stay on woodland if we can for a little bit longer. What about tax, Ed, and the implications with establishing woodland?
Tax, okay, yeah, so we're not accountants, so again, golden rule, seek advice from your accountant as early as you can in the process. The things to be mindful of, and the things we can signpost, are firstly, with if you're thinking about planting woodland or moving land around in order to facilitate the project so that you've got woodland under the right ownership, if you need to think about tax planning you've already done, you want to make sure you don't interfere with any of that. So you've got to think about potential stamp duty, land tax, liabilities and capital gains tax. And then from an inheritance tax point of view, the things you need to be talking to your accountant about are whether planting woodland might put at risk your agricultural property relief from inheritance tax. And also, if you go into woodland and plant new woodland, then think about the Balfour test. Is your farming business or the income in your business going to become investment income rather than trading? So you need to make sure that balance is not tipped over into investment, and you end up finding that you lose your business property relief as well. And don't forget about the farmhouse. If you've taken land out of agricultural production, then you don't want to be putting the relief on the farmhouse at risk as well. So lots to think about potentially, but talk to your accountant.
Okay, so just lastly on woodland, Lottie, you've obviously talked about the sort of government-backed schemes that are available. What about privately funded schemes, Ed, with carbon sequestration and everything else? What's out there?
Okay, so if you're not wanting to do it yourself and plant up yourself and do everything that Lottie's been talking to us about, then we do work with organisations who will rent the land from you instead, for them to plant their own carbon plantation, if you like. And rents for that are pretty attractive, depending on sort of how it fits in with your mix, but they'll pay £300 an acre, an index-linked £300 an acre starting rent, in addition to a percentage of timber revenue when they get to that stage in 5 or 10 years' time once it's established. It needs to be reasonably light land with irrigation available in the first few years to aid establishment is ideal. And they're long-term, they're almost generational leases in some cases. They can be 40-year leases with the ability to renew sometimes, so you could be looking at 80 years in total. Yes, it's letting land, but it's good rents, it's good diversification, it's well worth thinking about. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.